Hello and welcome to the Coronby Chronicles. This is a solo Minecraft survival series in which I, Alfred R.J Crowdus, or Alfie for short, will set out to build a beautiful city and form a new colony named Coronby. There will be trials and tribulations along the way, and all of the content will be streamed on my Twitch channel below. Oh, and by the way, I make music too, also linked below. With that, let's get into the video. Hello and greetings to all. My name is Alfred Roberts Jones Crowdus, or, for my friends, and for shorthand, Alfie. I've been sent on a mission by our blessed good virgin Queen Laura I of Illyria, on a mission to establish a new colony in new uncharted lands. And I believe I have found the perfect place. Now, I've had to set up a tent, and I'm now building my first hut, where I plan to start the first settlement. And here is my tent, Alfie's tent. I had to sail for many months. Many months. I arrived via this pass here, past the Stone Islands, through many things. The first and most notable of things I've noticed is the sea life and the flora and fauna. As you can see, I have a farm, and further up over here, I have established a chicken coop. This is because the land on which I stand is incredible for farming. Something about the soil is just absolutely incredible. However, I've also realized that the veteran rumors of the veteran adventurers who have gone and sailed the world before, what they said was true. There are, in fact, monsters on this land. Now, currently, I am gathering wood because I may or may not have not finished my hut currently, as you can see. But in this plane of land of which I am going to establish my city, I once spotted something. I'm not quite sure what it was. It was green. It didn't have any arms. It was four-legged, and it quite horrified me. And that isn't the only thing I've seen during my short time here. I've seen quite a few things. But nevertheless, I have a mission, and the best way to start that is to have a house at the very least. Let's light up the place. Considering what I have seen, these monsters tend to only spawn in dark areas or at night. I'm quite apprehensive about there being any dark spots within the area of which I want to settle. So down there is where I established the Port Crowdus. Yes, I did name it after myself. It was where I landed, and hence, it's mine. I am quite a bit egotistical like that. However, my main priority as of now is to get my house set up. The tent was nice, but it can only do me dutifully for so long. As you see, I am using fences as my windows for the time being. I simply do not have the resources nor the knowledge currently to make myself glass. So currently, these fences will do just fine. My next objective after this is going to be to build a form of government office. That has been one of the main directives I was given on my mission here. But that is simply a job for tomorrow. So it's the next day, and although I was about to gather resources, we had to cope with the great chicken escape.
I haven't actually thought of a name yet, but I've meant to, that's for sure. Oh, we have a chicken on the loose, quick, get the seeds. There. Chicken on the loose. There, yummy. This way, please. Thank you. Nah, you stay over there.
Now, I will admit, some of this narration is due to my faulty recording software, or at least the microphone I use to record. In some instances, it sounds incredible. In others, it is absolutely horrible. It is very unfortunate, but that is just the situation. So we have one map of a general area of which the port is set on. And as you'll see, this area, as highlighted, is perfect for landing, and that is why it's the port. However, along the coast, along this area and down further where I decided to establish a settlement, these areas are not for use. Because the problem with these areas, as you can see, they are quite steep. And thus, building a port or any sort of docklands is technically impossible in these parts. Hence why I established the port where I did. Another problem with the terrain, the caves. Caves and ravines. Now, although they add to an incredible amount of the natural beauty of this place, these caves and ravines pose some difficulty. This one is particularly the largest one I've seen currently on the island. And in this instance, you'll see it does seem like, it's just a bit of a cliff. But if you turn just slightly to the right, you'll realize, no, it's just an extended part of a ravine. And although that is great and really makes the place beautiful, it becomes very difficult when trying to establish a city. Now, one of the main reasons I did this by myself is because I wanted to be remembered as the man who established a city by himself, with no external help. Hence, the book and quill. I have the book and quill because I want to keep a documented case on everything that happens in this land. I want to be down in the history books. I'm quite selfish like that. So I decided to start writing. I started writing on when I arrived. I started writing on the land and the scenery, and the natural formations, the flora and fauna. I decided to write on the history of how I got here, my tent materials and the ship I arrived on, and the port, now named Port Crowdus. My research into the soil and the land around me and how suitable it is for agriculture, hence why this colony can become particularly self-sufficient and feed ourselves quite easily. And also the strange creatures, as aforementioned, inhabit this land. Although I did not mention it earlier, I have spotted living skeletons and incredibly large spiders amongst this land. However, those were lining the caves and the ravines, hence why I have particularly avoided going anywhere near them. And I also decide to write on where I've decided to start the town, and more or less the fact that I have decided that I'm going to start a settlement in this place instead of sailing further. And of course, I wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't for the reign of our blessed Virgin Queen, Queen Laura the First. As I was heading back to my hut after writing in my journal, I noticed that there were some people. Now, these people I had never recognized. I didn't know where they came from, who they were, who they pledged their allegiance to, and I did fruitfully attempt peace. I even put away anything that could be misread as an act of war. However, after I went to go save them from falling in the ocean, I got shot at. They missed, but I got shot at nonetheless. So in an act of self-defense, or at least protecting the land on which I now stand, I decided to go in and, kill them. I'm not risking being shot at every time I open my front door. But the main question I had was where had they come from, because I had surveyed the land for quite some time until I started capturing what had been going on and writing it down in the books, and I had not seen any settlement or even any evidence of settlements. I kept the banner, more for history's sake, and decided to cool my heels by watching the sunset before going to bed that night, as despite it all, the land is truly beautiful and just an amazing place to be.
Now going on 5 days I've been here. Let's get some rest.
Next, it was back to collecting birch. It is customary that every government-related building must be built of birch wood. Birch heavily symbolizes and is very symbolic of the Queen and the royal family. As such, I had to go on a massive birch collecting spree, which I was very blessed to find that there were plenty of birch trees within the area. But I went on a massive spree to get them, and sandstone. Now, it came as a shock to me, but I discovered that ordinary sand can be turned into sandstone, which definitely makes my life a lot easier. So with that knowledge, I set sail on a smaller paddle boat in the hopes of finding a lot of sand. However, I found dolphins instead. And as much as I would love to get work onto any government office, dolphins are dolphins. One of them even came near my paddle boat. However, after passing the dolphins, I realized there wasn't much sand further out. So I simply went back to the sand nearest to my landing at Port Crowdus and worked until my shovel broke. Quickly took some leftover metal and iron that I had left in the ship and went to go make myself a new one. Which is also where I learned that I now know how to make tools. With that, I set sail on the other side past the settlement of where I was going to lay my city, because there were some sand islands in this area, of which I then dug, and dug, and dug, and dug some more, and did plenty and plenty of digging. Also collecting any naturally occurring sandstone just to make my life a little bit easier.
Oh, hello there.
After which, I went back to the mainland. At which point I immediately started getting to work on making as much sandstone as I could. And, after a very shameless music plug, go check it out, I decided that was enough for the day and went to bed. Immediately the next morning, it was back to writing in the journal. I had to document the dolphins I spotted, and I had to mention how I spent the next day gathering all the necessary materials, or at least that day, to build the government office. Of which I immediately got to work planning out the layout of the building. Essentially, my intention was I wanted 2 offices on the side with the main reception area in the middle. Then, on the second floor up, we would have the meeting room. Now, it was at this point I realized that I'd needed plenty more birch, but that also meant I need a better axe because my current one was on the verge of breaking. Now luckily, I did pack a second axe. So it became quite light work to gather as much birch wood as necessary. And from there, it was right back to building and fixing up any mistakes I had made in my current planning process. I'd ultimately realized that part of it was too big. Back to bed for the night, and immediately the next morning it was back to work. I am simply too devoted to building this city. And yet again, with all the building, needs all the resources. I need plenty of resources to be able to suffice such a building. Especially because I wanted to be something grand in honor of the Queen. And as you'll see, this was my initial plan. Now, after getting the general shape and layout of the building, I had to venture off yet again to collect much more sand. Sand and sandstone were incredible things that I needed an incredible amount of sand and sandstone in order to complete this. But I also had to collect cobblestone so I could make the furnace in which to build a stone cutter, as a stone cutter would provide something useful to carve the sandstone. However, I realized that the stone cutter does not carve the sandstone into smooth sandstone. it was then that I realized that I needed to put it in the furnace and smelt it. So up I went for coal. After my short expedition, I quickly started smelting all the sandstone I could, before realizing that I had to strip all of the birch wood of its bark, which is a very tedious process and definitely took the durability out of my axe. However, it was light work for me. After which, quite a bit of sandstone had smelted, so I was able to continue working on the building. It was then that the most crucial moment came. I decided to name the settlement. I had one leftover sign, and I decided to give it a fitting name, something of respect.
Coronby.
And thus, the city of Coronby was born, and I was to be its governor. After which, it was right back to building the government office. I decided that there should be birchwood dividers between the two levels, which, although definitely aids in the build, certainly cost me resources and my axe. So, right back to making a new one, because my backup axe was on the verge of breaking, and it broke quite soon after. But luckily more sandstone had smelted by this time, so I was able to build much more of it. Of which it was back to lining the dividers with birch, whilst waiting for more sandstone to smelt. Then once that had smelted, it was back to building the walls and deciding what size windows I should have in the building. After that, obviously I had to document everything that had happened. And I had to make a quick note of how quick I had learned so much in so little time. Being able to craft tools, work on smelting sandstone. It was fascinating and truly remarkable by my standards, since usually I'm quite used to leaving that to someone else. And with that, this has been Alfred Robert Jones Crowdus, and I will see you in the next one.